Welcome back to the Self Trust Solution Podcast. Today's episode is a powerful reminder that sometimes self trust doesn't start with momentum, it starts with a pause. So, our guest, Marisa Guthrie, is a business coach, a writer, an entrepreneur who teaches solopreneurs to build businesses that protect their energy, sustain their income, and stay true to their values. With nearly 30 years of entrepreneurial experience, Marissa helped countless business owners create structures that honor capacity and generate ethical, lasting wealth. But the version of Marissa you'll hear today, the one who works fewer hours, earns more, and honors intuition as a strategic guide, was born from a moment of complete disruption. A chronic health diagnosis forced everything to stop, and in that pause, she had to decide whether to trust the shoulds of business or trust herself. Her story is a masterclass in what becomes possible when self trust becomes the strategy, especially when logic or traditional business wisdom says otherwise. Welcome, Marissa.
Oh, thank you so much, Dawn. That was such a great introduction, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, we're so glad to have you here. We will get to that diagnosis, but before that sort of changed everything, what did your business and daily life look like?
It's a really great question. I was just doing the entrepreneur thing. I got a family, I have to support my family. I was working 30, 40 hours, sometimes more. I wasn't taking a whole lot of holidays. I was often working through like school holidays. But I had come to normalize a sense of this is how it's supposed to feel. Like I'm in the thick of it. I've got the money coming in. It's supposed to be this exhausting. I just got to stick with this now for the next 20 years and then we're good.
What do
And
you think the beliefs or the pressures were that were driving that sort of mindset or belief system?
that's a really great question. I think it was an absence of knowledge that it could be done another way. And I think there was something in there about self-worth that if I was going to see the money coming in, I had to be near exhaustion point because I wasn't worthy of the money coming in unless I was at that point. So I was even though I've always been looking at doing things differently and different systems and challenging the system that we're in, I was living the reality of this very kind of traditional business norm and not questioning it for
Well,
myself.
you say that because Marissa, I think that we can confuse when we don't know that it can be different as if we're not open minded or innovative or that we don't think outside the box. And the truth is, some of the most innovative people also find themselves in certain boxes. It's not an all or nothing. Like you can absolutely be able to see bigger picture in different ways. And yet we can adopt these for many different reasons. We can adopt these just beliefs that if we never question them, if we don't even know to question, they can
Right.
hold us tight.
Yes. And that is such a beautiful observation because I was living in scarcity and fear that if I didn't turn up and do those things, then the wheels were going to come off.
Mm.
Buck stops with me. I have a really supportive partner, but he's 15 years older. And so it was falling on me to be the breadwinner for the family, which I now feel really comfortable with. But it was a big process of we'll get to that, but you're 100% right in that it I didn't my the cognitive dissonance was I'm trying to create systems that are different, and yet the system I've created is actually perpetuating something that I know isn't good for me, but I was just too fearful to step out of that. So when we come to talk about the self-trust bit, there was nothing there. I was trusting in things outside of myself rather than going inward and going, I wonder what's good for me here.
Yeah. What were the early signs that something wasn't sustainable?
It's hard to track, but it was really there was just an ongoing unsettled feeling, ongoing sense of, okay, is this it now? Like I can't get off this hamster wheel. As long as I keep turning up, it's going to be okay. And then the very next thought being, I can't turn up. But what choice do I have? So I need to turn. So it was like
Oh
this
my goodness.
vicious
Yeah.
cycle. And again, that the fear of what would happen if I stepped off for a second. And it was also for me, it was like this gradual wearing down of what I now call, like performative marketing, performative sales,
Mm.
just turning up and doing it for the sake of doing it rather than actually the things that were really making the difference. So I would turn up to networking meetings just to have ticked the box that I was there without actually looking at what the data was telling me, that this is not actually moving the dial in your business in any way. And actually, you don't enjoy doing it. And it's actually making you really exhausted to
Mhm.
turn up in that way. So I would say there was this kind of malaise, the underlying exhaustion before the big stuff started to hit.
And I mean, you can see how the inner dialogue was perpetuating. You knew something was off. I love this because it ties into my book, The Inner Room, so beautifully. And it's what we all do. And it, we know when we're I consider it the lobby versus the inner room. In the lobby, there's nothing wrong with the lobby. We're going to live most of our time in the lobby. That's normal. It's beautiful voices, it's some doubts and fears, it's everything. But there's that inner room, and your inner room was telling you something was off. But we get so used to listening to the lobby, and until we know to step into that, sometimes it takes a major disruption to show us that, and you had it. So tell us what.
I, I had it. And I would also say the thing that really, and if folks are listening and they're feeling this, so I do predominantly one-to-one work, which I love.
Mm.
And see my client's name in the diary and I think, great, excited to see them. What started to happen was a dread, a
Mhm.
feeling of dread. So that was another like, oh, why am I feeling this? And then the suppression. So then you could say, you can ignore that to some extent. It won't go away, but it can rumble on for a while. But then I got sick. I got sick and I just didn't get better. And I kept saying to my husband, something is off. I don't know what it is, but something is off. And I was scared,
Mhm.
frankly. So that was the moment that I was like, okay, I think something is going to have to change here. And the only way it's going to change is I need to pause. I had no clue what I was going to do, but I knew that I couldn't carry on the way things had. There were lots of kind of little other things, but it was the moment of getting really unwell that
And
was
are
okay.
you like your doctor has told you what's happening yet, or is this still you just know?
This is pre-diagnosis, and actually, I have a very good friend, a close friend of mine who has chronic fatigue. She was saying to me, it sounds like something else is going on here." And then what I did, which again, I'm sure this will resonate with you, is I started gaslighting myself. It can't be that bad. Is going to sort itself out at some point. Just hang in there. You just need a little bit more time off. And it didn't. And so when I was going to my doctors and they were trying to figure out what was going on and they were putting me on medication that wasn't helping,
Mm.
that was when I was like, okay, my higher self needs to now take the reins a bit because my kind of conscious brain is trying to check out of what's going on. It's trying to avoid what's actually going on here. When I was then trying to give over to my higher self, there was a lot of resistance still, which I'm sure is all things that you
Yeah.
would say in your work that you see a lot of. But it was that gaslighting that really was quite painful,
Yeah.
actually.
Because we're taught to push through or to fight. And there's just that fear of if we see what it is, it's going to be worse. Truth is, and I see that with people not afraid to look at their numbers in their business, their actual money. I see it with people who are afraid to actually start paying attention to their thoughts because they're afraid of what they're going to find there. And the truth is, the answer is always to get clarity. And the only way we get clarity is to take a look. And that's where
Yeah.
trust my work becomes so important is doing it from a place of compassion and true curiosity instead of judgment, because that fear is always about what we think it's going to mean about us, but we're the ones who make it mean something about us, and that's optional.
Right. Right.
Well, that's where we get to actually be more in relationship with ourselves so that whether you're talking to your higher self or in my vernacular, if you're in the lobby or if you're in the inner room, it's the safe space. That's what's so important.
Love that metaphor, that description, because it's so apt and it's so spot on. So I really love that.
So you said that you knew this illness had something to teach you. And I love that because, gosh, what a beautiful awareness. Do you think that came from the illness itself? Or is that something that you carried going into it? That wanting to be taught by adverse situation and circumstances?
I think it was a bit of both. And I would just say that my husband is a health professional, but I was talking to him and he's going, you need to get checked out. You need, but then at the same time, him saying he's someone who he doesn't do drama. Like he's a very measured kind of person. And he'd say, maybe you just need to, and I could feel this kind of fear rising up that if I just listen to him and I do nothing, I'm not sure that's going to be the thing that I need. So I think I had a bit of an awareness of, I mean, I'm a coach, so I help people thrive in adversity and from adversity. And certainly if I think about the trajectory of my life, that's something I've always had this inner wanting to thrive from a particular situation, one that we would never choose. I would never have chosen to get sick. Why would I? So I think I partly had that, but the other part of me was still in denial about if this is what is really happening, then I'm scared about what the consequences may be.
Yeah.
And then, so in that moment, feeling the potential of a liberation for that, but not quite being in that place where I could fully enjoy it. Does that make sense?
Tell me, what do you mean about that? The liberation.
I think things happen to us in our lives that force us to, they're like the hero's journey, that moment of the fork in the road. And we have a choice, don't we? In that moment, I could have chosen to just push on through because I was coming from a place of fear. Or we decide to go, okay, I think this has something else to tell me. I think that what I need to do is take a different course of action, even if I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah.
So for me, often life pushes us to places where we wouldn't choose. But if we do choose that, there is actually a liberation that can come from that. There is and certainly for me, my goodness, I'm about 18 months in from that experience, 18 months to 2 years in from that experience. When I look at my life now, and the way that I run my life and my business now, I'm so grateful for that. But I didn't know that then, right?
Yeah. And you can't.
So yeah, you can't possibly know that, right?
It's such a good reminder. Like, even when we're in the pain, when we're in the valley, or when we're in the darkness, like, there is something happening, and we're not going to know the benefits of it until the end. But when we believe their benefits will come from it, Like you said, something, this illness had something to teach you. And so you had better listen. So, what do you think
Yes.
helps you shift from fear into curiosity?
I think so. When I talk about my higher self, I mean the part of me that is more wise than I am in my thinking day to day interaction with my mind and the way that I interact with the world. And I think the point came when I could decide that again, saying I didn't know how this was going to pan out, but I knew I had to let go of what I had been trying to do. And I knew that there was a part of me that knew how to look after me better than my conscious mind did. And I guess that was the point at which where I felt, to use your language around self-trust, I felt that I've checked out of self-trust. I've abandoned that self-trust in the service of what I've quote unquote felt I should be doing. I now purposefully walk towards that. And it was like, okay, if you're going to teach me something, the things that have happened to me in my life have usually come from a point of stillness or quiet, not from a place of chaos or pushing or resistance.
Right.
And so again, I had to decide that I needed to drop, if I was going to trust the path that I thought I probably needed to be on, I had to drop down and really be prepared to listen to that. Because if I didn't, things were not going to get any better. And actually, they were going to get a whole lot worse.
Yeah. It collapses the time frame, I think. You tell me what you think. I think it would get better either way. One would be a longer, more painful path.
That
The other one creates more connection with yourself, actually gets to clarity and some resolution, or at least some care through it.
yes.
Yeah.
And that you saying that is like a major revelation for me
Mhm.
because that's exactly what happened. And I remember at the time friends saying to me, I'm so sorry you're going through this. And I was saying to them, please don't be, because actually something great is going to come on the other side of this. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but this feels like this is an important watershed moment for me. And while, yes, there were very challenging moments through it and still that level of fear, I would say, there it did massively collapse the time frame. Now, when I've spoken to many other people because many of my clients have chronic fatigue or chronic health issues, and many of them have lived with them for years. But the time frame was expanded because they didn't listen. Burnout the same. I would say mine was a form of burnout, really and truly. And that, as you say, when you don't go into the self-trust, it just expands that time frame. And it just means you ultimately prolong the pain and your own suffering.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard.
Of course. It's painful. And I think that's the key is that self-trust doesn't make the pain go away, but it does help you through the suffering. It gets rid of the added unnecessary suffering because you are
Yes.
creating a safer space to just care for yourself instead of pushing through, instead of gaslighting yourself, instead of deciding that this is the end when really it's just a new point of connection if you allow it to be like you so beautifully did. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
And I think
changed when because you started to block out the business shoulds and turn inward. So tell us what changed when you started to really like tap into that intuition as your highest expression of self trust.
yeah, so up to that point, I had been an associate of a very successful coaching practice. So I was working with other colleagues, and I was one of the kind of star converters. I was one of the star sellers, and again on paper that all looked great. But as I begun this process of this exploration into what the new phase was going to be, I realized that I really had to let go of that because I was working to a system and a structure that was essentially that had essentially been imposed on me. It wasn't one of my choosing. Now, when it came along in my life, it came along after COVID, and I was super grateful because the wheels had fallen off my business in COVID, as it did for many people. So I was really grateful. And I think it was that gratitude in a funny way that kept me stuck as well. So when I took the break, and I'd only decided to take a break, I was like, let me do 6 weeks and see how I feel. And in that 6 weeks, that was when I started to reclaim. It started with the recognition, and then came the reclamation and the refusal of, actually, I cannot go back to that system, because that system was just requiring too much for the results it was delivering, because it was requiring me to check out, right? It was requiring me to go against things that I knew were good for me, and to live in a way, and to run my business in a way that was much more harmonious. And it wasn't really allowing me to do my best work. So it really, that point was a major point for me, where I still had clients, and I had to gradually let that almost die a death in order to create the way that I now run my business. But that was a relatively challenging process as well, because I felt like I was letting people down.
Yeah. Because you were telling yourself that you should be grateful. I think it's such a good point, right? Like, you were grateful, but sometimes we can take something so beautiful like gratitude and then turn it into a prison sentence. Because I'm grateful, I should be grateful, and I should stay here, even though it doesn't work
Yes.
for me anymore. And that is a key. Like, it's it's so beautiful to see how it's such a good example of that ability we have. And if we're always checking in, then we can know when it's time. We're supposed to evolve, and we're supposed to change. And leaving something doesn't mean you weren't grateful for it. It doesn't mean that it wasn't the best decision to make at the time. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that it's complete now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, what was interesting was, I in the conversations I had to have with the person that was running that practice, they, to their credit, but I see how it would have held me back, they tried to make it work for me. How about if we do it like this? Or how about if we do it like that? And there was points at which I could have capitulated, right? I
Sure.
could have gone, okay, yeah, let's just do it like that. But I knew that was that was when the self-trust was like, I'm here to stay, and I'm not going anywhere, because it was at that point that I knew, this is, it might not hold me back for the next few months, or it might be okay to do this for a little while, but I just knew that path was complete, as you say. And so again, it was even harder when I felt like people were trying to help me, to say, thank you, but I still know that this isn't right for me. And I was 100%.
Part of it because it's new, right? Like, I want to make sure people listening here know that it being harder doesn't make it wrong. It was new
Right.
for you to really listen to that higher self, as you put it, and to really connect to your self trust. And so those old rules, they're still going to sneak in. Like, when someone tries to make it work for you, you should acquiesce. When something is good, when you're grateful, you should keep it. Those are the kind of unspoken rules, or sometimes spoken in your case, right? That can hold us back. And so that discomfort of turning down that beautiful invitation to make it work for you doesn't make that invitation any less beautiful. Doesn't make your saying no wrong. It's uncomfortable because it's new.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that we have to choose the discomfort in
Yeah.
service of our self-trust.
Everything
I
we want
think
is
we
on the
have.
other side of discomfort. 100%.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now you earn more while working significantly fewer hours, which kind of contradicts the traditional business logic, right?
It does.
What internally allowed that shift to happen?
Again, it wasn't just one thing, as you won't be surprised to know, but it was a series of, I didn't do this on my own, I would say. And again, to anyone that's listening, whatever you may be going through and whatever this means to you, we cannot create things, whatever they are, new phases, businesses, a new lived reality without support. And obviously with support from someone like you, Dawn, or whatever. But I had a ton of support along the way, and I was very intentional about how I chose the partners that were going to work for me. I had someone in my orbit that I had wanted to work with for a long time, and I knew it was the right time to work with them because, and this is really critical, the values that they exhibited and the way that they did things were things that now resonated with me even more because I knew I had to do things differently as well. So working with that person and the support that came with that was key to my now success, if you want to call it that. It also happened alongside, I was very candid with the people in my life that I was going to be making significant changes and I was very intentional about how I asked them to support me going forward, starting with my family. Because the other thing is, if you have a family or whatever dynamic you're in, when you do things differently, that kind of rocks the boat. That kind of affects the status quo and the dynamic of how people feel. So I had to sit down with my husband and daughters and say, guys, I've got to do things differently. And these are the ways in which I want you to show up for me. So I don't know how specific you want me to be, but yeah, I can talk about the practicals, but it was that slow unraveling and a deconditioning of the things that I had been taught about this is how you show up in business. This is what success looks like.
Yeah. It's beautiful because along the way, you're shedding more and more of those rules that you've adopted that most of us adopt that are out there. And so at this point, you're growing, it sounds to me, your self trust is, you're accessing it more, you're turning towards it more. And now you're leading from it more in the way that you are getting the support you need. You're aligning with that support more because it's not this external thing to fix you. It is matching up with your true need. You are defining how you can show up for others and how you need them to show up for you. And you're not letting that internal dialogue of, I'm going to let people down. This is going to make them upset, rule the roost. You're actually just having the conversations and creating more clarity.
Exactly right.
So, looking back now, what would you tell the version of you who was pushing through, overriding her capacity, and working against her own values?
I would say stop, just slow down for a minute here because you know this is not working for you anymore. And you know that there is something much better on the other side of this. And you have got to be prepared and willing to feel that discomfort. And there may be some fear as well, but the fear isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a part of the package that you get with the discomfort. I would say to them that letting people down isn't what we often mean it is. It doesn't mean that we are a bad person, because I think there is also this narrative and this trope in our culture and society that if we let others down, that means something about us. In the way that we can sometimes or have to let people down, we can actually uh, do better work. We can actually show up for people in a way that we couldn't if we were so leaky with our boundaries. So I would just invite that woman to think more about listening to what I now would call my intuition or self-trust, about the knowing that the path that she was on, she knew wasn't good for her deep down, but she had chosen to override it.
Yeah.
If that
Absolutely. I love that idea though of letting people down. I heard someone say once, were you holding them up? How could you let them down if you weren't holding them up? I like to think of it in the way of, I want to give the other person more credit. Often when we think we're going to let someone down, we're not really giving them the credit they deserve. Yes, they may be upset, but we're deciding that they can't handle it. We're deciding that our relationship can't withstand it. We're making so many decisions ahead of time when we think we're going to let someone down that isn't very com- complimentary of the other human. And
Yes.
I just think that we generally we're surrounding ourselves with people who have a lot more resilience and strength than maybe we're giving them credit for, including ourselves.
For real. And that is so beautifully expressed, Dawn. I really love that because I talk a lot about sovereignty in my work, about all of us being sovereign beings. That doesn't mean ruthless individualism. It means we're in connection with others. And if we're going to be in connection with others, we've got to give them credit. And sometimes that notion that we're letting people down, it runs very deep because it's really connected to our primal survival, our sense of belonging, that
Mhm.
what's going to happen if I'm cast out by the tribe. It's all
Yeah.
very real. But actually, when I look back on the people that I thought I was letting down, in many ways, I was setting them free from a dynamic that we had been in together. So it's this kind of multi-layered thing. I think now that for me, really trusting ourselves is so good for others. When we really trust ourselves, that has this amazing knock-on effect for all the relationships in our life, be they professional, personal, whatever, our connection to the wider community. So for me, it's about being able to accept our own autonomy and let others be in their autonomy as well. So so much of what you say just gives me goosebumps, Dawn.
100%. It's so good that thing self trust does improve our relationships with others because when we make it safe, that's the way I really talk about self trust. Self trust is making it safe, creating a safe space for yourself to reach high and to walk low. Like when we have to walk through the hard parts, like create a safe space to take care of ourselves through it, but also to reach high, reach for those next levels, to be the person. And when we do create that inner safety to feel any feeling, to take any action, to tell ourselves and others the truth, then we can be more vulnerable with others. We can be more upfront. We can be honest. We can let them think and feel what they want to think and feel without letting it mean anything about us. There's so much power in it. Absolutely. So for listeners who feel that tension between maybe business shoulds and what their intuition is asking of them, what would you say would be the first step towards trusting themselves more?
So the first step really has to be, and again, go with me here, it has to be that the business in all its facets has to meet your needs. Now, I'm not talking about being exploitative of others, extractive of others. I'm not talking about manipulation, not talking about coercion, anything like that. I'm talking about if we all create businesses where our own needs are met first, so that includes our capacity to rest, to work according to our energy, as well as being financially resourced, that will only have a positive effect. So many business owners I see, and obviously that come to me now, particularly because of the story I now can share with them, are looking to help everybody else first and then wondering why it's not sustainable, they're not doing their best work, why they're exhausted. So for me, it really has to start with what do you want your business? Yes, we want to know what it's going to look like, but crucially for me, we have to know what it's going to feel like. Because what I encourage people to do is to go deep into the feeling of actually, I need to just be working this many days a week and then be honest about how much money they need to generate from that. So it has to start with the self, first of all, but the self in service of something greater. So for me, whenever I'm working with a business owner for the first time, the very first thing we'll talk about is what do you want this business to feel like? What are your personal goals? How do you like to work? what's the business model going to look based on? Do you like to work early? Do you like to work late? Do you like to work a 4-hour day? Just really the real basics. And then we can build from that point. But without that as the foundation, we're building to an external should
Mm,
rather than an internal knowing.
totally. Yeah. I was what I call overworking and underliving for over 2 decades in the hospitality industry. I led sales and marketing teams. And when I left there, I would call it burnout, I guess, not knowing a better way to describe it. Completely self-created, as many times it is, right? Sometimes not, but for me, it was self-created 100%. And I knew that when I wanted to build my business, that I wanted to build it differently than I built my career. And so what you're doing resonates so much for me. And because I know had I not had my self trust walk, which is what created leaving that industry. So I was already on it when I decided to build my business. Had I not, I would have built my business the way that I built my career and I would have just headed down that same road again. So I love that you're taking people through how do you want it to feel? What do you want it to look like? Because we can get locked in this trap of thinking it's either serving people, like it's almost like what you were talking about gratitude earlier. We can want to be generous to our own fault. We can be both generous to others and still have a business that works for us. And it's a both and instead of an either or. And so tell us now what exactly you help people with and how people can find you.
So I help people with really building businesses that navigate that tension between what you're describing, that binary of either we can do good work or we can be well paid, but we can't have both. So I really help to unravel that for people because we we focus on all the things that I've said, building that foundation that works for you and then building on that so that you can do your best work for others. I work with solopreneurs, heart-led entrepreneurs that want to do great work in the world, that care about people and their communities, and we make a profit as well. So that's how I work as a business coach. And you can find me at my website is the best place where all my resources are. And that's marissaguthrie.co.uk.
Yes, and you have a free masterclass that you're offering to our listeners. Tell them about that.
It's interesting you were talking about safety because my masterclass is about fair and fearless ethical pricing. Safety, there's nowhere where safety shows up more than in pricing and how we decide to price. So it's a really sticky, big topic. So I have a free masterclass that people are welcome to download that really helps to start to unravel all of that so that you can do good work and get well paid and feel really good about the way that you do that. So that's my free masterclass on my
I
website.
love it. And we're going to have that linked in the show notes as well as Marissa has a Substack that you would love to check out. I know that you would enjoy reading some of this great content from Marissa. Marissa, thank you so much. I love this conversation. Thank you for modeling so clearly that self trust isn't about pushing harder. It's actually about listening deeper. And your story is such a powerful reminder that business doesn't have to cost us our energy. It doesn't have to cost us our well beings, and it definitely doesn't have to cost us our values. And that sometimes the most strategic thing we can do is trust the truth we feel before the one we can logically explain. So, to everyone
Love
listening,
it.
if Marissa's stories resonated with you and you feel the pull toward a different, more aligned way of building your business, trust that nudge. It's asking something of you and go check out Marissa's free masterclass. And remember, if you have a self trust story to share, I'd love to hear it. And if you're ready to create your own, I'd love to help you claim it. Visit theselftrustcoach.com or click the link in the show notes for details. And of course, make sure you're subscribed and follow so you don't miss any of the incredible stories ahead. Thank you, Marissa, for being here today.
It's been such a pleasure, Dawn. Thank you so much.